After his decade of domination, the fact that he's still the ace on the most dominant team in baseball, and the only thing that he's missing is a championship to really, really cement him as like one of the greatest pitchers to ever play. Clayton Kershaw to me is a GOAT without a championship, so I have to give him a GOAT profile. And with just to start it off without further ado, it is July 20th, 2020. I here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and today I'm going to address the fifth member of the GOATs in terms of age. First, I started with Mike Trout. He was the first baseball player that I mentioned because he's been the MVP or the runner-up every year he's been in the league. Then next, there's Kawhi Leonard, who's ended literally two dynasties and became the Toronto Raptors' greatest player in one season. Following him, you have Aaron Donald, who since he's been in the league he's been a 5-time first team all defensive player. He's been the best in his position ever since he's gotten there. Seems like there's no way of slowing down. For me, he's a GOAT for his position. Next, there's Kevin Durant, who was not only proven that he was the best player in OKC, he went to Golden State and shown that he was the best player on that team, and he was the best player for at least a back-to-back title run in Golden State. So the next GOAT that I would like to include on here, just by age, is Clayton Kershaw. If you don't know who Clayton Kershaw is, he is a 32-year-old left-handed starting pitcher who currently plays for the Los Angeles Dodgers, has a lot of accolades to his name, but basically he's been the best pitcher in the 2010s. AL or NL, I would make the argument. The only thing that he's missing is championships. And considering he's been on the Dodgers, a team that has made it really deep in the playoffs almost every year since he's been there because of him, many people are disappointed and like to blame Clayton Kershaw for being the reason they haven't won yet. But I still think Clayton Kershaw is the best pitcher of at least this decade. When people look back on Clayton Kershaw when he retires, he's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. And like they're going to look at him as one of the best pitchers that we've ever seen, especially in this era as a baseball fan, especially for me who's been watching baseball since like 2007, really. So just to give you a little bit of background, he's a left-handed pitcher, of course, naturally. Coming out of Dallas, Texas, he went straight out of high school after being named the Gatorade National Player of the Year for baseball. One story from his high school, he pitched an all strikeout perfect game in high school, meaning that for 27 straight batter, or they don't play 27 innings in high school, but every single batter that approached the plate against Clayton Kershaw was put out by a strikeout. Like he struck out every single person on the other team to end the game. Like ridiculous, like insane stories. So following that, he would go on to be signed by the Dodgers after being picked 7th overall in the 2006 MLB draft. And following the 2016 draft, Clayton Kershaw was then called up by the Dodgers in 2018, where it took him a second to become a bit of an all-star, but once he started, he never really stopped. Okay, in his first season, his age 20 season for the Los Angeles Dodgers, he would end up starting 21 of the 22 games he would play for the Dodgers, finishing with a 4.26 ERA and a 5-5 record in 107 innings. He finished with 109 hits, more hits than innings pitched, and he finished with 100 strikeouts, less strikeouts than innings pitched. His first stint was all right. And I mean, he was still showing that he was a good pitcher. But those are still numbers. Those are still really, really good numbers, incredible numbers for his first season in the leagues, better than a lot of others. Considering where he is now, considering where he is now is a massive improvement from where he was when he was at that point. That year, the Dodgers did win the NL West, and they would go on to beat the Cubs in the NLDS and lose to the Phillies in the NLCS in the year that the Phillies won the championship. But Kershaw was still starting to become a starter, at least a starter on this Dodger rotation going into his age 21 season. And this season, he would finish with an 8-8 record with a 2.79 ERA in 171 innings while starting in 30 of 31 games that he played in. He would go on to finish with only allowing 119 hits in those 171 innings, and he struck out 185. He would go on to lead in hits allowed per 9 innings. Even though he wasn't an all-star, he didn't have the numbers there, and because the Dodgers were still a playoff team, he wasn't being recognized as an all-star yet. But he helped the Dodgers make it to the playoffs. They won 95 games, the most they've won at that point in a long time, at least since before the 80s. Or since before the 90s at least. But Clayton Kershaw helped that team win 95 games, where they eventually beat the Cardinals in the NLDS and lost to the Phillies in the NLCS yet again. But of course, this year, Clayton Kershaw was slowly and surely becoming that dude in the National League, but he wasn't officially there yet. His age 22 season would bring his first winning season in the NL. This season, he would have a second straight season of pitching below 3 ERA, but this time he would do it in over 200 innings. He would finish the season with a 13-10 record in the 32 games that he started, finishing with a 291 ERA in 204 innings. He finished allowing 160 hits, less than the 204 innings, and he finished with 212 strikeouts. More strikeouts than innings pitched. This season, the Dodgers would go on and completely miss the playoffs after being fourth in the NL West. But Clayton Kershaw was still starting to get recognized for what he was doing on the Dodgers, even though he wasn't yet named an All-Star. But yeah, by the end of his age 22 season, going into his age 23 season, Clayton Kershaw had not yet been an All-Star, but he had a sub-3 ERA twice in consecutive seasons where he had significantly less hits than innings pitched, and he had more strikeouts than innings pitched, while being a starting pitcher for a winning team like the LA Dodgers. So this moves into his first All-Star season, where Clayton Kershaw in 2011 ended up with a 2.28 ERA, leading the league in ERA, in wins, and in strikeouts. The first time, I believe, he won the Triple Crown. But in this season, he would go on to start 33 games and pitch 233 innings in a season where the Los Angeles Dodgers finished third in the NL West and completely missed the playoffs. But Clayton Kershaw this year would finish with a 2.28 ERA and a 21-5 record. He would allow 174 hits in 233 innings. He would finish with 248 strikeouts on the season. He would lead the league, like I said, in ERA, wins, and strikeouts for the first time in his career. He would lead the league in WHIP, which is walks/hits per innings pitched, and he would lead the league in hits per 9 innings for the second time in his career. He was named an All-Star. He was named a Cy Young for the first time in his career. He was 12th in MVP voting, and he was given a Golden Glove. And by the end of his age 23 season, Clayton Kershaw was recognized, at least for that season, as being the best pitcher in the National League. And this was 2011, and this was just getting started in this decade. And going into 2012, he would go on to win the Roberto Clemente Award after winning the Triple Crown for the only time in his career. He would go on to earn his second All-Star bid, finishing with a 14-9 record and 2.53 ERA in 33 starts and 227 innings for the Dodgers. He would finish with 170 hits allowed and 229 strikeouts for the season, still more strikeouts than innings pitched. This season, he would finish 16th in MVP voting, earn an All-Star vote. He would earn an All-Star bid for the second year in a row, and he would finish as the runner-up in the Cy Young Award. As in that season, the Dodgers would finish second in the NL West and completely miss the playoffs. My impression is that if they would have made the playoffs, he more than likely would have been the ERA, or he would have been the Cy Young, as he still had the ERA title in the National League for the second year in a row, which is a very impressive feat to do, and he was still doing this. Moving on to his age 25 season in 2013, Clayton Kershaw, for the third year in a row, was named an All-Star. He was named a Cy Young for the second time in his career, and he was 7th in MVP voting. He finished with a 16-9 record for an LA Dodgers team that finished 92-70 with the first time they won the NL West, at least in their current streak. The first time they made the playoffs in the last 4 seasons. But this time, Clayton Kershaw had got him there, so he had earned the Cy Young. Again, he finished with 2 shutouts. He finished with 236 complete innings pitched and a 1.83 ERA in that season. He finished with 164 allowed hits in those 236 innings with 232 strikeouts. He had less strikeouts than innings, but he led the National League in strikeouts. He led the league in ERA plus for the second time in his career. He led the league in WHIP for the third time. And like I said, for the first time, he was the best pitcher in the National League, while the Dodgers were at least the best team in their own division. And he was starting to be recognized by this point. If he won by the time he won his second Cy Young, they realized that it wasn't a fluke, and he was actually one of the best pitchers to play, at least in this in this era, and this is at least by the end of his age 25 season. He's already recognized as one of the best pitchers in baseball history by the time he entered his age 26 season. And then even that season, it went kind of unreal. But that season, the Dodgers would end up beating the Braves in the NLDS in 4, and they would end up losing to the Cardinals in the NLCS the year that the Cardinals made it to the World Series. But of course, it continues. Going on to his 4th season, Clayton Kershaw would win his 4th Cy Young in that many years, and he would be named the MVP of the National League, in addition to being named an All-Star for the 4th time. This will probably go down as his best season to date, but he would go on to pitch 198.1 total innings for the Dodgers. He would start in 27 games that season, where he finished with a 21-3 record. He finished with a 1.77 ERA in 198 innings, including 6 complete games, the most of his career. He allowed 139 hits in those 198 innings. He only allowed 39 runs. He finished with 239 strikeouts. His 5th season in a row, finishing with 200 strikeouts in a season, by the way. He would go on to lead the league in other pitching categories. He also led the league in strikeouts per 9 innings with 11.6 for the first, or 10.8 for the first time in his career. And he had won an MVP as a pitcher, which very few pitchers in MLB history have ever done. But by this point, he had won his 3rd Cy Young in 4 years, which to me is what solidified him in at least the GOAT discussion, and or at least he's considered one of the best baseball players that's playing right now. He deserves to be on my GOAT list. He's more than elite for what he's been able to do in LA. That season, the Dodgers would win the NL West yet again with 94 wins, but they would lose to the Cardinals in the very first round. They would lose in 4 games. But by then, with 3 Cy Youngs in 4 years, Clayton Kershaw had established himself as the best pitcher in baseball. And the first year he won the Cy Young, he won the Triple Crown, something that not many pitchers can say they've done. But of course, this year he led the league in wins and ERA, and if he played a full season, he probably would have led the league in strikeouts at that pace too. So this is the player that he was, but he had no established playoff success. But in the season, he had already been that guy. Going into his age 27 season, he already had 3 Cy Youngs. And of course, in that season, he would finish with a 16-7 record, starting in 33 games, finishing with a .213 batting average and a league-leading 232 innings pitched. The second most innings he's pitched in his career, and the most he's pitched, and he hasn't had a season like that since. He finished with 4 complete games, 3 full shutouts. He finished with 301 strikeouts on the season, leading the league, only allowing 163 hits in those 232 innings. The only time Clayton Kershaw has ever thrown for 300 strikeouts in a season. He would go on to make his 5th All-Star game. He would finish 10th in MVP voting and 3rd in Cy Young, as the Dodgers finished with the best record in the NL West for the 3rd year in a row, before they eventually lost to the Mets in 5, the year that the Mets ended up going all the way to the World Series. But that was Clayton Kershaw up until then. Just continuing on, going into his 2016 season with the LA Dodgers, his age 28 season, he would go on to start 21 games and finish with a 12-4 record in a season where the Dodgers finished with 91 wins, winning the National League West for the 4th year in a row. Clayton Kershaw was named an All-Star for the 6th year in a row since 2011. He was named 5th in Cy Young voting, finishing with a 1.69 ERA and 149 innings. He allowed 97 hits in those 149 innings, 28 runs, 172 strikeouts, more than innings pitched. And considering he didn't play the full season, he was still one of the league's best in 2016, and he deserved his 6th straight All-Star and at least a top 5 finish in the National League Cy Young, despite not playing as many games as he had in previous years. This would continue into the playoffs, where the Dodgers would go on to beat the Nationals in the first series, and they would lose to the Cubs in the NLCS, the year that the Cubs won the World Series, and Corey Seager would win Rookie of the Year. Dave Roberts won Manager of the Year. And in 2017, would go on to be one of his better seasons, and at least one of the Dodgers' better seasons. Clayton Kershaw in his age 29 season will go on to lead the National League in ERA and wins, yet again wins for the third time and ERA for the fifth time, as he he started 27 games, finished with an 18-4 record in a season where the Dodgers finished with 104 wins on the season, the most they had won up to date, especially with Clayton Kershaw as their starting pitcher. That season, he would finish with a 2.31 ERA and 175 innings pitched. He allowed 136 hits in those 175 innings pitched. He finished with 202 strikeouts. After last year, this is the first time he finished with 200 strikeouts, but that was the seventh time in his career that he had done so. And he led the league in ERA plus for the fourth year in a row, finishing with his seventh straight All-Star appearance. He was 17th in MVP voting, and he was the runner-up in the Cy Young Award race. He would eventually lose to Max Scherzer when Max Scherzer put together an amazing Cy Young season. But eventually the Dodgers in the playoffs, after 104 wins, they would sweep the Diamondbacks in the NLDS. They'd beat the defending champion Chicago Cubs in 5 games in the NLCS, and they went on to lose to the Houston Astros in 7 games. And this is when Cody Bellinger was the Rookie of the Year, and Clayton Kershaw was definitely dealing on his end as a pitcher. That was the end of his 7-year stretch, of which he was making consecutive All-Star games. The very next year in 2018, his age 30 season, he would go on and start 26 games for a Los Angeles Dodgers team that would finish winning 92 games and winning the National League West for the 6th year in a row, while Clayton Kershaw was its ace. He finished with a 9-5 record, a 2.73 ERA. This is yet another season. I mean, every season except for his rookie season, for 10 years in a row, he's been able to post a sub-3 ERA, and in 3 of the seasons he wasn't named an All-Star, but I still count those. He started 26 games, and he had, like I said, he had a 2.73 ERA and 161 innings pitched. He only allowed 139 runs. He finished with 155 strikeouts, the first time in a bit that he's finished with less strikeouts than innings pitched. But of course, he was dealing with a lot of injury stuff, dealing with his back and everything. The Dodgers would go on to the playoffs, where they would beat the Braves in 4, they'd beat the Brewers in 7, and they lose to the Red Sox in the World Series. At this point, Clayton Kershaw got his team into the World Series twice, but they just weren't able to get it done, especially against 2 historic teams, being the Astros and the Red Sox, when the Dodgers were a historic team in their own. And of course, this year, Walker Buehler started. This is when Walker Buehler settled behind Clayton Kershaw and set himself up as Clayton Kershaw's heir in the rotation once Clayton Kershaw is done. But for right now, Clayton Kershaw is still the ace. And even going into last season, for his age 31 season, Clayton Kershaw started 28 of the 29 games that he would appear in a season where the Dodgers would finish with 106 wins. The best regular season the Dodgers have put up to date in terms of wins. Clayton Kershaw this season would finish with a 16-5 record, a 3.03 ERA for the first time he posted an ERA above 3 since 2008, which is still ridiculous when you think of it and you put it into words. He went on to pitch for 178 innings, allowing 145 hits, giving up 60 runs on the season, and finishing with 189 strikeouts in those 178 innings, more strikeouts than innings pitched. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the 8th time in 9 years. And he would go on to finish 8th in Cy Young voting. In that season, the Dodgers would end up losing to the Nationals 3-2 in their very first season. So, I mean, looking at Clayton Kershaw right now, he is a 32-year-old starting pitcher that when you look at his accolades in his career, he has 8 All-Stars. He has 3 Cy Young Awards after being the NL wins leader 3 times, the ERA leader 5 times, and the strikeout leader 3 times. He's pitched a triple crown the first year that he won the Cy Young in 2011. In 2013, of course, that was another Cy Young that stood out among a bunch of, but that was the first time that he was the best pitcher in baseball, and the Dodgers at least won their division. They were the best team. He was the best pitcher in baseball on a winning team. That was his second Cy Young. By the time he won his third, he was the MVP of the league. That's an elite season in itself. He even went on to pitch a no-hitter in 2014 as well, along with being, the wins and the ERA leader. He was close to being the strikeout leader. He's gotten his team deep into the playoffs. Ever since 2013, the Dodgers have made the playoffs. They've made the World Series twice. They've lost in the NLCS 3 times as well, or they've lost the NLCS twice in that span. But Clayton Kershaw has really been that guy since he's gotten there. And, I mean, even right now, if you look at him, he's still the ace of that roster. No matter how good you say Walker Buehler is, Clayton Kershaw's still the ace of that lineup. And considering the Dodgers are still the powerhouse team to get through in the National League in total, I think they're still the favorites to win. They're one of the favorites to win the title this year, and Clayton Kershaw is definitely one of the reasons why. I imagine that if they go to the World Series, Clayton Kershaw will still, as he's always been, he will be there. He'll be their ace pitcher to kind of lead their way. I hope the Dodgers eventually win the title with Clayton Kershaw as their starting pitcher. They have the roster, they have the means, they have the opportunity to do so, but they haven't. But to me, that's the only thing he's missing. As of right now, he's a 32-year-old pitcher who's still in the midst of his prime, who pitched an ERA over 3 for the first time since his 2008 rookie season. His second year in the league, he didn't have an ERA above 3, but. And he even had a 3.03 and was still named an All-Star in his age 31 season. I imagine he's not going to skip a beat this season. In his age 32 season, I imagine he's just going to pick up where he left off, being one of the league's most elite pitchers. And to me, his MVP as a pitcher carries weight, and he's won 3 Cy Youngs in a 4-year span. The fact that the Dodgers haven't made a championship is kind of like, yeah, it's iffy, but it's still baseball. Whereas an individual player, you have less say as to what happens to your team in winning a championship. But he is a starting pitcher. I think once he wins a championship, his quest is really complete. He'll have nothing to really prove in the MLB anymore because he's basically won everything else. And without further ado, I have nothing to say. Clayton Kershaw is elite. He's more than elite. He's definitely a GOAT. He's a tier above. And I'll really, really love and enjoy to watch him play and especially pitch. Definitely in the playoffs, it's a short regular season, so I don't know if I'm going to see him pitch a lot this regular season, but we'll see. But Clayton Kershaw is definitely someone to keep your eye on, especially as this season continues or as it goes into the playoffs, because he is that dude. And yeah, with that, if you ever get a chance, watch my boy Clayton Kershaw. He's wearing number 22 on the Los Angeles Dodgers. And if you just watch him, just look at where he places his pitches and actually ask yourself, should pitching look this easy? With that, I've said my piece on Clayton Kershaw. Peace out.